Well, certainly believe I play in the left brain, if that's what you're asking. Yes, I'm not good with numbers. I'm not, mechanics I can't figure out, but for some reason this is my area that I can do. And I believe that I'm very creative at times, but I also, I feel that it's now, my creativity comes from getting the right people together to making a project work. I may have a vision, but if I don't have the right set designer to inspire me or a costume designer, then I'm not as creative as I could be. Yes, I mean, I believe there's a process to the madness. I mean, there may be times where I think of an idea at a bar and write it down on a cocktail napkin and then try to figure out how long I want to give myself before that project comes to fruition, and who to bring together to make it happen. Much like the coterie and in all theaters I work at, and also theatrical people, we love giving ourselves deadlines. And that deadline is so important. It's like you're going to reach what you can at that goal, and then you're going to freeze it, or that's going to be your finished product for now. There's been times where I've gone back to projects because at the freezing time it didn't work for me. I did that with one show. I did it 4 different times at my past theater at late night. And the Birds I was never happy with until this final time we did it. And that involved because I wanted more to the set, I wanted more to costumes, I wanted some wilder dance scenes, I wanted to tell the story better. But I think that the creative process is a very interesting thing because you don't know what people are going to throw out onto the table. You give a framework, and then you've got to guide the people, if you're the director, and you've got to guide them into a certain area that you want to go. If you envision the whole thing going to be film noir, then everyone needs to be on that plate. And that sometimes can be, it's not a conflict, but it certainly is something to get a designer on board and figure out the ideas that you want to convey. And hopefully they join you. My latest show, Spooky Dog, is a perfect example. The team was so well on knowing late 60s, early 70s cartoons. Mary Nichols' set is in the round. You sit inside the cartoon. John Fulton Adams' costumes are beautifully cartoonish with plastic wigs and the bright colors of that time period. And Tim Munger, our sound, truly made a cartoon soundtrack where they may move their hand and get a bonk bonk, noises with it. It's really wild. It's been very interesting. Well, you try to open up, you give them parameters, you give them some kind of border to go into, and then you hope that they bounce between those borders. And somewhere in there is going to hit something that triggers you, or on this, the sound, I let the cast even decide. They were like, oh, you know what, I would rather have a wah, wah, wah right here than and I was like, all right, let's try it. And the actors made it work, and the sound designer gave me such a great sound that went into the show, and it wasn't in before. So you also have to give a freedom to it. But you're right, at the end of the day, the director has to make the final decision on what stays and what goes. John gave me many different costume ideas, sketches, renderings, and we honed it down to the look that we wanted, which was to try to look as close to Scooby-Doo as possible, but still add elements of cartoon style, like Tiffany, which in Daphne, the character Daphne, she has pink hose on, but we wanted to take it farther with it to give it that kind of edge, and so John brought in pink fishnet sparkle hose. And I'm telling you, it all of a sudden makes Tiffany a little bit sexier than you ever imagined when you were a kid watching that cartoon, even though I did kind of have a crush on her. But I also had a crush on Fred too, but that's beside the point. But you know what I'm saying, you have to give some borders, but you've got to let them go to as far as they possibly can and then bring it in. You know, in the beginning, years and years ago, it was really hard. I didn't want to hurt people's feelings. I wanted them to have their creative outlet. Then I realized that by giving my input, it helped them be creative and focus into a certain area. And so it's changed now. I know designers that I work with, what is their weaknesses and their strengths, and I immediately try to find that out with new designers too. Mary Nichols, our set designer, she's an incredible painter. I mean, so we really wanted to utilize that she painted the floor, the walls. I mean, you're in a three-dimensional cartoon. So we got someone to build the set because she's not a builder, but she could design it and paint it. So we figured out her weakness and her strengths fast and filled that in. Richard, our lighting designer, I knew that he could only hang 20-some lights in that space. So we had to figure out what, I said to him, give me a couple of big bang things, and the rest is going to have to be just general lighting. And he hung a disco ball and hung a black light and a strobe, and those are our special effects. And he ran with it and put those into scenes to bring the action up or bring the action down. It was very interesting. When we had to fly in Neverland here at the Coterie, constraints, Jeff had us on a trampoline and had miniatures built of all of us. In the birds, when I wanted birds to attack and I didn't have any access to a fly system, I had actors with poles with plastic birds on them. Yes, your creativity comes up. It heightens it. You figure out how to solve problems that could happen on stage or how to be more creative. I think limited budgets are so much better than having big budgets. I'm happy to go to Broadway and see the big shows. I'm happy to see a chandelier crash on stage. I'm happy to see a helicopter fly out, but that's what I'm paying for. When you see a smaller theater, you want to see magic. You want escapism. You want to see how they're going to do this. Like the Actors Theater in town just doing Boston Marriage. They couldn't afford a set, so they did it at the Webster House in an antique room. Done. You were engulfed in that moment. And I think that many times people forget that theater is a creative outlet and will throw the money into it instead of trying to solve it in the most basic levels. I truly believe mine is informed by my life. I mean, I was born in the 60s. I grew up in the 70s and 80s and 90s when pop culture was everywhere. Things were being created. I mean, new worlds were being opened for us. And I certainly love to hold a mirror up to pop culture and look at it and actually look at it through a different eye to reveal moments in time for people, to put elements in. We have several moments in Spooky Dog besides the Scooby-Doo references. We have references to that time period, bubblegum rock, the theory that you could all of a sudden break into dance and song. Your pop culture references that are in the show are, besides the music, like with White Rabbit, anytime they smoke pot, and there's lots of mini references that may go over younger people's heads, but they'll laugh at the bit. But people of Gen X or Gen Y or baby boomer generation will laugh because it's a reference to a moment of time, and that's really interesting to me to watch. I love that when an audience, it doesn't matter what age, is drawn into a moment laughing, and it's all for different reasons.